Hey guys, it's M4J here, and welcome back to the M4J network here on OpenTTD. We have a very busy episode waiting for us today, so I'm going to be cracking on with it. As usual, it is a time-lapse. 3 parts to this episode. Each part is going to be split up with its own commentary and things like that. Mostly it's going to consist of me just chatting about what you're seeing on the screen, as well as little bits and tricks and little things here and there that I've had to do in order to make this all work. I'm also going to be chatting a little bit more about rail news, because since last week's episode there has been a couple of updates in the rail world I'd like to sort of voice my opinions on. Mostly good stuff though, to be fair. It's not really going to be you know, what the hell are these clowns doing? It's more going to be, you know, maybe not done in the right way, but good idea in principle kind of thing. And I'm also going to start off with an explanation as to why this episode is a day late. I actually kind of like Fridays now as being a day for OpenTTD, although I think the viewer survey still suggests you guys prefer it on a Thursday. However, I am still waiting for more people to answer the viewer survey, so please, 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 if you're new to the channel or if you're an existing subscriber slash viewer and you haven't yet filled in the survey, link is in the description. It should be the first thing you see under the video description. Please do click it. It takes like 5 minutes to fill out. You can be as vague or as detailed as you like, and it really, really does help me out. I'm still aiming to get 100 people filling that out. Because then that's basically 10% of my viewership, and I can come up with some good numbers based on that. I would like that to be done by the end of the year. I understand getting 80 odd people to fill in a survey, but you know, in 2 weeks is not going to happen. But it would be awesome if it did. And then I can tailor what you guys want to watch to what you guys have said you want to watch, and that will make my life a lot easier, and it'll make your lives probably no different, to be honest. But at least the videos will be slightly better. Anyway. The reason the video is a day late is because I went on a bit of a recording binge this week. I decided that over Christmas period I was going to take some time off, spend it with family, spend it with the better half, and just relax, kick back, unwind, enjoy the fact that 2020 is nearly over. Although, as I keep saying to everyone else, time is a relative construct, and therefore the 1st of January is no different to the 31st of December. But that's just, you know, something that keeps me awake at night. But because I was deciding to take some time off, I thought I'd go on a huge recording binge just to get as many videos done as possible to fill in the gaps and also see in the new year. So Monday I recorded 8 episodes of Prison Architect, which took me about 8.5–9 hours to do. Tuesday I then finished up my F1 2020 season, which were the last 2 races, Brazil and Abu Dhabi, as well as an end of season video, which also acts as a start of season video for next season. So I recorded 7 videos on Tuesday, which took me again about 8 hours to do. Wednesday, I was recording footage for this video. So most of what you see here was recorded Wednesday. Some of it was recorded yesterday, bearing in mind I'm recording this on Thursday. So you're watching this on Friday, so Thursday was when I recorded this, including the voiceover that you're listening to now. What else happened Wednesday? What day is it today? It's Thursday today. Yeah, I literally just said that. So yeah, Wednesday I wasn't very well. So I was actually planning on recording this video and having it done ready for Thursday. But because I had no voice, I couldn't do the voiceover. And I also had a headache because I'd been wearing my headset all day for the last 2 days. And I think it constricts on my temples a little bit. Because I had pains in my temples. And I just felt a bit cruddy in general. So I decided I was not going to sacrifice the quality of this video in order to get it rushed and ready. So as I've said in my blog, and also as I've said quite a few times on Discord now, it's not so much that I'm slacking or anything like that. It's more I feel I do my best work in my own terms, if that makes sense. So the only person who really puts pressure on me to get something done by a certain time right now is me. And I'm learning to sort of let go a little bit more and relax a little bit more and not let it get to me too much, because the stress from that ends up making things worse. So if a video is 24 hours late, I do apologize. Hopefully no one's like sitting there tapping their watch wondering. I always try and let you guys know on Discord at least an hour or so before the video is due to go live, just so you know that there's not going to be one. Because I know I think the only time I didn't do that was when I was really ill. And I kind of disappeared for 2 weeks. That wasn't great, and I do wish that had been done a little bit differently, but I wasn't in any fit state to even pass on a message to be posted. So I think that's the only time where that's actually happened, and I've tried to avoid it happening since. But yeah, things are a bit more fluid here at the moment, and I'm kind of enjoying it. You know, I'm actually enjoying the fact that I choose now what goes up on the channel, which you'd think is pretty obvious, but actually it's not, because viewers unknowingly most of the time dictate how a channel works, what videos go up, that kind of thing. And knowingly or unknowingly, it can be a very stressful thing, having to just do what's popular. And I like to do what I like to watch, and I like to watch what I make. So, not in a vain, arrogant way, by the way, more in the case of I like OpenTTD, I make OpenTTD videos, I like F1, I make F1 videos, that kind of thing. And nothing is better than watching a video where you know the person making it has put so much passion and knowledge and interest into that video. And I'd like to think that mine do that too, but not always. And you can kind of tell, I think I said this last week, you can kind of tell where I've kind of rushed it, or I'm not really with it, not really feeling it, not really enjoying it. These last couple of videos though, I've been really into. I think the project that I've been working on here is like the linchpin really for this network now. Getting this all up and running, making it tick. The company is technically profitable now because of these lines. The money we're making, basically train operating costs are about half of what the train income is now. So we're doubling our money on that. The only reason the company is still losing money is because the cost of new vehicles and auto renew is astronomically high. Eye-wateringly high, in fact. And I might go and look and see if there's something I can do in base costs that will bring that down a little bit more. Because I feel like some of the costs are ridiculously high. And again, auto renew is the trick. I could turn auto renew off, but I'm pretty sure as trains get older, their running cost goes up. I could be wrong there though, but we'll see. Anyway, so this episode starts with this, which is me going through and re-signaling the line between Munfingford Paragon and Queen City Junction. This wasn't originally part of this episode. This was meant to be done a few weeks from now. But because I'm currently about to do the Gardcity Southern franchise, I thought why not actually just go the whole hog and get this section of line up and running as well. It only runs down as far as Queen City right now. It doesn't continue to Sanley. That will be done when the Western Reaches South line is done in its entirety. And yeah, I think that was... Yeah. I was just trying to remember what I was going to say about that, but yeah, I think that was it. I'm also re-signalling Munfingford Station here as well, because the branch to Queen City hadn't been built at the time that I originally did this. And in fact, I think most of this hadn't been signalled at all. And I kind of... Big stations like this, it actually works better still if you restrict trains to certain platforms still, because it means that you can't then completely clog up a station. As I discovered with... which station was it? I can't actually remember now. There was a station. It wasn't Beffingway. Oh, Nuthill. That was the one. As I discovered with Nuthill City Centre, you can have as many through platforms as you like, but if you signal them badly, you still end up blocking all the lines. So that problem was learned very quickly and solved very quickly. And again, this will go in the history of the M4J network series, but the amount that I've learned, not just about rail as such, like rail news and things like that, but also in how to design and build functional stations and functional railways. I've had a look at a lot of different templates from all around the world. And this is why people ask me on Discord sometimes what my opinions are on certain station designs and things like that. And I don't claim to be an expert. You know, I don't work for Network Rail. I don't design stations for a living or anything like that. But with the amount of research I've done, things like I did a lot of reading about the London Bridge rebuilding, the Thameslink project as a whole, also the rebuild of Blackfriars and why that was done, because it didn't make much sense to move the tracks from one side to the other. But when you start to look at the platform configuration now and how it used to work, it actually makes a lot more sense the way it is now, almost to the point that you think, well, why did they build it the other way around to begin with? And that's kind of my my thought process now when I'm building stations on the network. Is I kind of, before I actually go to the game and build it here, I kind of run like simulations in my head where I think what could possibly go wrong with this design. And if I'm not 100% comfortable with it, obviously it's never going to be perfect when you build it in the game. And the fact that I've had to rebuild Beffingway, Nut Hill, Denston, Munfingford, Plindham, Woolworth, Great Winfield Airport, I've had to rebuild practically everything. Fort Flonwood Central, Fort Flonwood Parkway's had a little bit of a touch up since I built it, but that one was actually the first time where I designed a station from scratch with that simulation in mind, thinking where are trains coming from, where are trains going to, excuse me, what's the most optimal way to get them to and from their destination, is this design going to work, and a little bit of changing and tweaking needed when I added the Southwestern trains last week. I had to rejig some of the junctions to get trains to run through the centre track between Central and Parkway. But once I got that working, that was the only thing I didn't envisage. Everything else pretty much works exactly how I planned it out. And I built that station 12 months ago? Was it just before last Christmas? I think I did it. I actually can't remember now. I'll have to go and check that. But, you know, little things like that. And then I come back and look at some of my old stations, and I am of that way of thinking of, what the hell was I doing when I built this? It was never going to work the way I wanted it to. And that's why when people ask me for my opinion, I kind of take the question a little too literally, and I give them a very honest opinion as to what I think about it. So there was one recently, a station for a Transport Fever map, and I wasn't a fan. I didn't think it would work. It had the slow lines on the inside with a bay platform in the middle, but it also had a branch platform on the outside, which was also a bay that then went off on its own little branch line. There was no track connection between the two, but then it had the fast lines running on the outside of the slow lines. And it was meant to have been inspired by the Great Central, which you can definitely see that. And in terms of a Great Central station, it ticks that box perfectly. But I really didn't like the idea of having the fast lines on the outside. I believe that's something they do a lot in the Netherlands, and I think also France, and even like High Speed 1 between St Pancras and Ashford, or technically Ebbsfleet. The platforms are in the centre and the fast lines are on the outside, through lines. And I've never liked that design as a British-inspired network. It's a very European thing in my opinion, which is why it's there on High Speed 1. It's never really interested me. It's never really something that I've looked at and thought that's a viable design. I don't think it's a bad design. I just don't think if you're going to have something that's British inspired, you should scrap that immediately. And I felt like the justification for it existing just didn't really work with me. If you want to have a Great Central inspired line, that's fine. You can build your station like that. And you can have your bay platform in the middle as well, because that's not a bad idea, because then there's no conflicting movements. But then put the fast lines separate to the slow lines. Put them above or below or to the left or to the right, whichever way you're looking. Don't put them one either side. The fast lines should never straddle the slow lines, in my opinion. They either run side by side, or the slow lines go either side of the fast lines. That's kind of rule 101 when you're designing railways, is that kind of thing. And it's to do with avoiding as many conflicting movements as possible, and also allowing trains to switch between the slow line and the fast line as quickly and efficiently as possible. And you just can't do that. I mean, you can do that with them on like inverted, but you can't. I don't know. It doesn't work for me. It just does not work for me. It's easier to get slow lines to diverge away from fast lines when they're on the outside than it is to have them on the inside, because then you've always got to have grade separation, and I don't know, it doesn't work for me. That's the simple answer. And it's not something, there's no real life example here in the UK outside of High Speed 1 that you can point at and say this is what it's based on. And if you want something that's inspired by something in particular and you can't find a real life example of it, then it's not inspired by anything. It's your own design, which is fine. You can also do that, but it doesn't really, you can't then say it's based on this, because it isn't. And I have a few instances of that myself here on the network. There are some things where I just wanted to build them because I thought they'd be cool. Most of them do work. Some of them have since been scrapped. Some of the freight that I've rebuilt and tweaked recently a lot of that is actually based on some research that I was doing a while ago about Doncaster Eyeport and Daventry International and London Gateway, some of the, and Immingham Port as well, some of the bigger freight interchanges here in the UK. And it's kind of an amalgamation of all of them. There's nothing specifically that I can say this was based on this and that comes from that. It was all like, I looked at lots of different examples. They all do things very differently in their own unique way. They all do it very, very well. I do think rail freight is something that we should definitely be looking to exploit more here in the UK, which is something I mentioned last week as well with the Orion package trains. And I just feel like, I do have some things that aren't inspired by real life scenarios, and I tend to mention those as much as I can. But then I also have things that are very obviously inspired by real life. So you can look at Gardcity St George, for example, and straight away you can say, well, that bit's Euston, that bit's St Pancras, that bit's King's Cross. Same with, GSP, you can say that's obviously Paddington. St Michael is actually more Euston than GSG, but the fact that the overground runs into GSG is the Euston inspiration. And you got GSJ, which is like, it's a bit like Marylebone, but not quite like Marylebone. That's one where I did put my own sort of spin on it. And then you've got GST, which is like Charing Cross, and then you've got GSE, which is Fenchurch Street, and they might not be geographically in the right places, but they are definitely inspired by those kinds of London terminus stations. And then you've also got some of the big interchanges that are sort of, they're kind of based on stations like Temple Meads and Birmingham New Street and Crewe. Big stations like that, big interchange junction stations, which are actually my favourites. My favourite kind of stations, where there's just lots and lots of train movements. They're not specifically going from anywhere to anywhere, they're just there. And I find that a lot with Crewe. Every time I've been to Crewe Station, there's just a train that doesn't seem to be going anywhere, but it's there. And you kind of look at it and you think, okay, I'm in Crewe now, because there's just random trains all over the place. And that's, again, I talk about some of the bigger stations here on the network. There's going to be a train every 30 seconds, 20 seconds in some cases. And I felt like I was being a bit ambitious with that. But Munfingford Paragon, which last week was a very, very quiet station with just 2 trains calling there every hour, and I think it now has something like 12 trains an hour going through it, which is a train every 5 minutes, and that's going to increase even more in the not too distant future. And actually, whilst we're on that subject, the first part of this video, so last week, Southwestern, I added 10 new services, and I can tell you how many trains there are currently operating on Southwestern. Gardcity Southwestern currently has 42 trains running on it. At the time of me recording this, Gardcity Southern, which you'll see me do momentarily in part 2 of the video, Gardcity Southern has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 new services and a total of 49 new trains. And these are the skeleton services, by the way. These aren't still the full intensive timetable. This is still just the warm-up act. The main act is backstage, still warming up its vocal cords. Gardcity Southeastern, which is the third part of today's video, and actually led to an interesting conundrum, which I'll talk to you guys about when that time comes. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 fast services and currently 4 slow services, but this is the absolute bare bones spinal cord skeletal services. There are so many that I've missed out, and I do want to get that in early before people start commenting saying, well, what about this service, Mark? I know I haven't put them in yet. I will put them in, don't worry. But yeah, currently we've got the 8 services. Each one has 1 train at least. I reckon there's going to be another possibly 30 odd trains here. So we're looking at 120 odd trains already, and this is just on the skeletal services. So there's lots of semi-fasts that haven't been added yet. There's a few more stoppers that don't run to Gardcity. So for example, Munfingford to Denston. Actually, that's what I do next, so you will see that, but that's a bad example. Something like Bathurst Street to Denston, or Drentbourne to Tarnway and Funston. Services like that. They don't necessarily have to go into Gardcity. They don't even necessarily have to go anywhere near Gardcity. Even things like Rinston Airport to Drentbourne, you know, that's a potential service right there. There's going to be a roughly 200 to 250 trains added to the network by the end of this project. What you're seeing right now is like the bare bones of me adding trains. And each time I start a new franchise, it takes me 4 days to actually get all of this up and running. 4 days. What you're seeing right now is an hour to 2 hours of me just adding the services in, or occasionally doing a little bit of signaling or a little bit of rebuilding here and there. I then add all the services in, which takes me 2 hours roughly to do, and then I have to test it all. And because I test each one individually now, I have to wait for it to do a full cycle, then I have to start the next one, do a full cycle, and some of these journeys take 2 hours to do, and I have to do that 10 times. Some of them take 3 hours to do, some even take 4 hours. And you think, you times that by 10, that's 40 hours maximum to do all of that. And then once that's done, I have to then come up with the schedule, clone the train however many times I need, and then I have to release them periodically so they don't all clog up the depot in one go. So you can definitely see how this is a time-consuming project, shall we say, hobby, pastime, time sink of my life, basically. It's a great load of fun when it works, but when it doesn't work, it can be hours and hours of frustration. But yeah, let's not turn this into a negative thing, because I want to be really upbeat about this video, because actually, as I said, this is the culmination of something that I've been wanting to do. And I say that a lot at the moment. There's a lot of things that I've been wanting to do and just not had the time to do it. But now, because, I mean, especially this year, having so much free time, I've managed to sort of refine my work schedule a little bit more, and I can do things like this. So this is part 1, which is just drawing to a close now. And then when we come back in part 2, which will come up very, very shortly, I'm going to let the music take over just for a few seconds. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to tell you all a little bit more about Gardcity Southern and how that franchise operates. So welcome to the Gardcity Southern franchise. Now, these names have been chosen because of the majority of the franchise operates geographically either to the southwest, the south, or the southeast of Gardcity. And again, I want to get that in early because some of the Gardcity Southern services do run as far east as Denston, which technically is further east then the Gardcity Southeastern main line, which runs to Tarnway and Funston, and then down to Waterside Airport, and then down to Drentbourne that way. So I just want to get that in a little bit early before people start talking. And trust me, people talk. You make a mistake on YouTube, it's like hyenas. It's like how Scar dies at the end of Lion King, basically. Anyway, so this is the Gardcity Southern franchise, and this is service number 1, which is, and I should have had the numbers here in front of me. In fact, I can get them in front of me very, very quickly, no problem. This is 2AXX, which is Munfingford Paragon, technically to Fort Flonwood Parkway, although it is listed as Plondingston Bay because it uses the loop that runs through the southern platforms here at Fort Flonwood Parkway. Which is also, it's thrown me off a few times when I've been checking the departures from Munfingford. I'm like, why have I got a train terminating at Plondingston Bay? But because the way the departures board works is it takes the last non-repeating station, and that's the one that its destination is considered. Or if you've got 2 services running to the same station, it will take the last non-repeated station before the terminus. So for example, if you had 2 trains leaving Plindon, both going to Gardcity St Peter, one might say Cardtown because it's the last station before Gardcity St Peter, and that's what happens in real life too. So for example, the line out of Waterloo that does the is it the Twickenham loop, I think it's called, where it runs via Brentford, Wimbledon, Twickenham, I've said that really weird, Twickenham, and places like that. It doesn't actually, technically it loops around and comes back to Waterloo, but it doesn't tell you that. It says it goes to, I think it does say Brentford, and then once you get to Brentford, it forms the service back. And a really good example of this is when I went to Dover on the train last month. I actually got off at Dover Priory. The train was for Sandwich, but once it gets to Dover, it becomes the train to St Pancras via Ramsgate, and it does the same in the opposite direction. It goes to Ramsgate, and then once it gets to, I can't remember where now, is it Margate maybe? I don't even know if Margate's on the same line. I don't know Kent that well, rail-wise. But it gets to a certain station and then it becomes the St Pancras train via Dover and Folkestone. Folkestone. I nearly got Folkestone and Felixstowe mixed up then, and that's a terrible sin. So I really like the way the departure board works in this game. It's so awesome to sit and see. And I will be doing some videos in the future. Part of the route overview series, actually, where we won't necessarily be following a train each week. Sometimes we'll be following a station. And we'll just be seeing what trains are going where. And speaking of the route overview, before we get into the crux of the video again, I will talk about the route overview series very, very quickly. So there will not be a video next Tuesday. I think I said last time out there would be. I want to use some time between Christmas and New Year, really, to actually sit down and have a proper think about how this series is going to work. Because I had an idea going into it where each journey would start where the previous one finished. But when we got to Munfingford at the end of last time, one of the reasons I'm rushing through this project now is because we had nowhere to go from Munfingford except back the way we came, and I wanted to continue off in a different direction. So because it took me a week and a half to do the projects that you're seeing on screen now, I didn't have time to record a route overview video with enough time to not have to be up till 2 AM every night editing. In fact, even later than that, sometimes 3 or 4 AM. And I don't really want to get back to that because that's not a very healthy way to live your life. So I will record a few in bulk, and I will not release the next episode until I have at least 4 in the bank, because each one takes me, again, 4 days to do. Writing the graphics is quite a lot, and trying to come up with the history and make it consistent, things like that, the backstory behind each station. Some of it is based on, obviously, real things. So this station was built, I extend the period of time a little bit because it's all Victorian, or it's meant to be Victorian. But when I talk about some station rebuilds, that's based on the truth. That's when this, when Plindon was rebuilt, when Woolworth was rebuilt, when Great Winfield Airport was rebuilt. A lot of the history you read in that last episode was real history. That's what happened. This was rebuilt to allow extra platforms to serve this branch line, for example. So yeah, I'm going to bulk record quite a few. I've got a lot of footage already from different lines, but I've got a new recording style now for that series, so I might have to go back and re-record some of it. But now we've got more and more services being added to the network, and there will be more added off camera over Christmas and New Year as well. Just when I feel like adding some stuff, I'll go ahead and do it. There's going to be a lot happening behind the scenes on the network over the next few weeks, and it's all working towards different videos that I've got ideas for. So the route overview series is not going anywhere. It's doing very, very well, actually. I'm very, very happy with the response to it. But I want to work on it a little bit more and kind of improve on it already. Not that anyone's complained. It's kind of like my own feedback looking at it. So to go back to what you're seeing on screen, Service 2AXX is now in place. Next up is Service 2BXX, which is Munfingford Paragon to Gardcity St Mark via Buntbourne Parkway and Dinpool East. So it's an all-stopper. Pretty much all of the stopping services you're seeing in these videos are all stoppers. As I said, I haven't really gone through and added in the semi-stopper or the semi-fast, whatever your preference is. And I think the designation for whether it's a stopper or a semi-fast has changed slightly on the M4J network. It's not quite in line with what it is in real life. I don't really know what a semi-fast train is in real life anymore, because most of them are just fast. You know, like between King's Cross and Cambridge, you can get on a networker that goes non-stop. That's technically an express train, 100 miles an hour. Obviously, it's not an HST or an Azuma or a 180. But, you know, it's still an express train in my opinion, because it runs from A to B without stopping, and it runs at its maximum speed. So I don't really know what the classification is these days. The water's a bit murky in that regard. Maybe some of you have better ideas on that than me. But, yeah. These are all stoppers anyway. So they do run from A to B via C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and so on and so on. So the Munfingford train especially goes Munfingford Paragon, Runton North, Senfingwell, New Flarfingford, Sudinghall, Duntown, Buntbourne Town, Buntbourne Parkway, Pindingston, Farbridge, Trenwell Lakeside, Dinpool South. So that's where the main line actually goes straight from Trenwell to Dinpool East, but there's that little branch that I think used to be part of the overground that then got severed and turned into part of this line. And that's where Dinpool South station is. Then Dinpool East, Sibbertsham, Brentburg Main Line, Shoreham Junction, and Gardcity St Mark. Now, I remember saying when I built Shoreham Junction that I planned on it being as busy, if not busier, than Clapham Junction. And we're definitely getting to that stage now with the amount of trains. I can also safely say that GSMA, the westernmost terminus platforms, are now full. There is no more capacity. So some of the stoppers might end up terminating elsewhere. Some might... I had an idea to run some of them around the overground loop to GST and have that be a terminus instead, but I don't know if that's going to work or not. We'll have to see. The third service that you can see me adding, or I've already added, is Munfingford to Denston. This one runs via Tarnway and Funston, which is along the... it's not the Grand Central. I was about to say it's the Grand Central, but it's not. I actually don't know what that line's called. And then Service 2DXX, which you see me adding now, runs via the Southeastern main line, which goes between Buntbourne Town and Denston. So actually, maybe that is the Grand Central that the previous service runs along. That could well be. Thinking about it, could well be. The next one you'll see me add after this, we start to add some of the express trains. So 1AXX from Munfingford to Gardcity St Mark, stopping only at Buntbourne Parkway and Dinpool East. Then we have 1BXX, which goes from GSMA down to Denston, stopping at Cadingbury Junction, Bathurst Street, Drenninghad East, and then Denston. 1CXX, which goes from Munfingford to Denston via Cadingbury, Bathurst Street, Drenninghad East, and Denston Carnegie. So instead of going from Gardcity St Mark, it goes from Munfingford. Then 1DXX, which goes from Munfingford to Denston via Sunwell and Ponfingway, Cordinghatton Central. That's the Grand Central main line. That's the Grand Central main line. Then Pentown, Tarnway and Funston, Tarnville, Drenninghad East, and Denston Carnegie. Then 1FXX, which goes from Munfingford to Denston via Planpool, Mondham and Tontfield, and Little Wanham. That's on the Southeastern main line. And then finally 1GXX, which goes from Munfingford to Drentbourne via Planpool, Mondham and Tontfield, Little Wanham, Wanborough, Fentown West, and then Drentbourne. and that is also running along the Southeastern main line. Then we have 2FXX, which goes from Munfingford to Queen City, and that just stops at every single station between the two. And then we also have 1HXX, which goes from Gardcity St Mark to Queen City via Dinpool East, Buntbourne Parkway, Munfingford Paragon, Munpool Bridge Tunnel, Trutborough, and then Queen City Junction. So there's a lot of services and there's a lot of trains being added. Some of the ones I'd like to do off camera is a semi-fast service between Gardcity St Mark and Queen City, stopping at some of the more major stations along the way as well as the interchanges. Obviously that's going to be a bit tricky to do because, as I said, GSMA is pretty much full to capacity right now. On top of that, maybe Denston to Queen City and Drentbourne to Queen City via Munfingford. That one's plausible, could potentially be done, although getting trains to and from the depot might be a bit tricky, so I'm not quite sure how that would work. We might have to build another depot somewhere else just for that specific reason. And then also Bathurst Street on the Network Central tracks down to Queen City via Munfingford, and Tolmay and Funston, and basically the direct route along there. There's lots of other ones that I want to add. I will have a look in the future. What I want to do eventually as well, once all this is up and running, is actually go look at the cargo flow legend again and see where passengers are coming from and going to, and design new services based around that, which is why I want to get these skeleton services going, because if you have a train that stops at every single station along the line, then you can see where passengers are coming from and where they're going to, and it gives you a much better idea as to how to distribute your passenger flow a lot better. Also things like increasing capacity on routes. So if you've got a train that can only hold 300 passengers and there's 400 waiting at station, then you either add a second unit and double it to 600, or you add more frequent units and boost the capacity that way. There's lots of different ways to do it, and I really want to get into that side of things as well. It's not just building railways that interest me, it's managing them too. And that's why I like talking about rail news, because that side of things is actually something that's interesting me a lot more now. As someone who likes engineering, I do love the how, but I also like the why, and why these things are built and then how they're run. So it's like how 0.5 basically. How things are built is one thing, but how things are run is very, very different. And that is something that I'm going to be doing a lot more of within this series as well. So it's why I kind of dip my toe into rail news and talk about things that interest me in that area. One of which is happening this winter, in fact, is First Group have agreed to give up basically all of their franchises in return for management contracts on those franchises. So First Group currently operate Transpennine Express, Avanti West Coast with Trenitalia, Great Western Railway, and I want to say South Western Railway. I think those are the four. Do they still operate whole trains, or is that now its own entity? I think that's its own entity, isn't it? I can't remember. Or if it is, they operate it as open access. I can't remember. Anyway, those four were the ones in particular that I was reading about in an article that George sent me. And I like the idea of the management contract because it's the DFT taking the financial risk then, and it makes it more enticing. So it's not nationalisation, but it's not franchising either. It's not really privatisation anymore. It's basically what happens in London, and also what happens in Tyne and Wear regions with the Metro, where in London, TfL own London Overground, the DLR, Crossrail, everything, but they hire other companies. So is it Abellio that operate London Overground? I think it is, and it's Serco, or it used to be Serco. It might not be Serco anymore that operate the DLR. I might have just gone back 10 years there to say Serco. I should probably look that up because that's something that people will definitely correct me on. Who operates the DLR? Right, the infrastructure is owned by Docklands Light Railway Limited, which is part of the London Rail division of Transport for London, and the first franchise was awarded to Serco, and that began in 97. At least I got that right. Serco did at one point operate the DLR. Oh, is it MTR now? Is it MTR? Do they do it now? Who runs the bloody DLR? Oh, okay, yeah. Keolis. Keolis? Is that how you pronounce them? Keolis Amy. They've been operating it since December 2014 and it expires in April 21. I can imagine that'll get extended actually, because they're quite good. Plus they're getting new trains delivered soon, so they're going to... You kind of want the existing operator to bed in the new trains rather than doing what Southwest Trains did, which was hand it over to the new operator and then them immediately going, huh, we didn't want these. And then that's what, £20 million wasted or whatever it was. So I like the idea of management contracts. However, what I don't like is this sounds like it's a DFT decision. The DFT decided a while ago now that management contracts would be the norm going forwards. But I assumed that meant that current franchises would expire first, and then the current franchise holder would have the option for first refusal as to whether they wanted to take on the management contract or not. But what seems to have happened is the DFT have just decided this franchise ends now, and you're taking on a management contract instead, which, in fairness, First Group have agreed to, but some of the franchises didn't have long to run anyway, so those have just expired naturally and the new management contract has started. But on a couple of the franchises, First Group still owed money to the DFT as part of the franchise agreement, and they've been forced to pay all that up front. So one of them was £33 million that First Group are now having to pay the DFT to cancel the franchise and then start up a management contract. Now, to me, that sounds a bit like if you rent a flat and you pay your first month's rent in advance, which is mostly the norm these days. Sometimes it's a little bit different. And then after 6 months, your landlord said, oh, I'm going to give you this flat for free, but you need to pay me the existing, the remaining 12 months of your rent first. It's not free. You know, it's kind of, or they kick you out of your flat, but they make you pay the remainder of the year's rent first. That's kind of what it sounds like to me. Now, I know it's not as obvious and as simple as that. There's a lot more to it. And again, First Group have agreed to this, which suggests that they still see this as the good end of the bargain. But it does kind of bug me a little bit that once again, the DFT are trying to do things right, but are going completely the wrong way about doing it. That just doesn't make sense to me. And I've read a couple of different articles about it now, trying to understand how it works, because I completely misunderstood it the first time around. I thought, because Avanti was the first one I read about, and I thought Avanti had failed, and the DFT had bailed them out, so I completely misread that. But once I understood it, that's one of the ones where that actually makes sense, because it now means that First Group can completely concentrate on just running Avanti. They don't have to worry about franchise agreements and paying certain amounts to the government each month or whatever it might be. They can just fully focus all of their resources on running the franchise and putting their heart and soul into it, which, I mean, just today they've announced, just today I've seen an article about their new 3-class system that they're introducing. And I still think that's a bit over the top maybe, but I think one of my problems with that is it breaks the norm, but we need to have more of that, really, for things to work. So I'm kind of interested in seeing how this works out. And I do like what Avanti are planning to do with the West Coast. I still don't like the fact that typical new franchise operator comes in and every single train has to be replaced. That doesn't sound very economically viable to me. Particularly if they're now saying that they can't actually afford to run the franchise as a franchise, which is why they're now doing it as a management contract. But I do wish them success with it, and I think it will be more successful now. And I do like the fact that the DFT are now taking the financial risk off of these operators, because A, it entices more companies to get involved and it doesn't become a monopoly, which is kind of what we're starting to have now, because First Group and Virgin and Stagecoach, they were the only ones really that were bidding for the main franchises. Everyone else had kind of disappeared. Abellio and Arriva as well were sort of ducking in and around. But more often than not, it was like the big five, basically, and everyone else who used to operate franchises had kind of drifted away, because it's just not that enticing. You get like 1% profit every year, and everyone thinks that you're money-grabbing bastards because your fares go up every year, but that's just so you can afford to pay the DFT back. It's nothing to do with making more money, it's just trying to make ends meet. So I like that, and also because most of the franchises recently have failed because Network Rail haven't delivered upgrades in time. So again, the DFT and Network Rail are now sharing the burden on that. So if there's a failure for whatever reason, if something doesn't get finished in time, and new trains get delayed because of it, then the right people now are taking culpability for that, which I think is also a very, very good, encouraging thing. I still think it's really unfair that Northern lost their franchise over it, because a lot of it was not their fault. And the way the DFT seemed to swoop in like an anti-hero and claim to have saved the day when they're kind of the ones who caused it in the first place. It's kind of like, you know, you hear these stories about firemen around the world who set fire to buildings and then put the fire out, and they're seen as like the local hero. It kind of feels like that with the DFT, where they're setting all these economical fires around the rail industry, and then they're coming in and bailing companies out, and they're made to look like the good guys. But really, they're not. They're the instigators. And I really don't, it doesn't sit very well with me. And again, it's not quite as simple as that. There is a lot more to it, but at first glance, that is what it appears to be, and I'm really not a fan of that. So hopefully, this new management contract system will stop what really were the fatal flaws with franchising, and a lot of people's arguments against privatization should now have been dealt with thanks to this. Things like rail fare increases, that's entirely now at the discretion of I mean, there is still a DFT involvement, but because the DFT now pay these companies to run the railways rather than charge them to run the railways, fares shouldn't rise as much, because now, I don't know, where am I going with this sentence? Now if fares do rise, it is entirely the fault of the DFT rather than the train operators. So you can say, the DFT are the fare setters now. They're the ones who decide how much you should pay to travel from London to Glasgow. And the management companies, which are the ones who used to be the franchise operators, they're now the ones who simply provide the train and the service. So if you get to Glasgow on time, but you had to pay twice as much, you can thank Avanti, and then you can blame the DFT. That's how I'm going to be doing it from now on anyway. And the fact that fares do keep going up and the wrong people are being blamed for it every single year, I do find that to be grossly unfair. So I think now we can all start... I don't want people to start blaming others and stuff like that. That's not very healthy. But I think we can all start now realising that the way the system was running was very, very flawed. And hopefully this is the system that will now fix it. Anyway, I think I'm done talking about that for now. There will be plenty more conversation on it in the future. Don't worry. And I'm very interested in hearing what you guys think in the comments. And I can reply to that in the next episode as well. So feel free to leave your comments and your thoughts down below. And as for now, I'm going to let the music take over for a little bit longer, and we're going to get ready for part 3, which is going to be the return of Gardcity Southeastern. And finally, we have the Gardcity Southeastern franchise, which is technically the oldest of the three here, but because of the realism initiative, it's actually the newest of the three in that regard. It's the final one to be fully populated with the skeletal services, but it's the first one that ever existed, if that makes sense. So we had the semi-fast trains that ran between Gardcity St Mark and Drentbourne, and we also had the express train that ran between Gardcity St Mark and Gardcity Central, which I think is actually part of the Southeastern franchise, not the Gardcity Southeastern, but it uses the same tracks and depot as the Gardcity Southeastern. I think that's how it works. I was going through this earlier because I also had franchises that don't services that don't exist in the game that exist on the schedule sheet, and I also have services that don't exist on the service sheet but exist in the game. So I don't know how that's happened, but I will go through and fix all of that and make it work. Anyway, first up we have 2MXX, which is the Gardcity St Mark to Gardcity St Mark service via Cadingbury Junction. If we're talking about real life inspiration, this is actually based on the Thameslink Sutton Loop trains, which I believe actually go from Bedford to Bedford via Sutton, but in this case it goes from GSMA to GSMA via Cadingbury Junction. And this runs on the Southeastern Main Line, Gardcity Southeastern Main Line, as far as Munfingford, and then it it diverges towards Cadingbury, and then from Cadingbury it runs to, is it Donbourne Bridge, I think, where it diverges again, and then runs up that weird branch line that I built via Kenville Airport, that then connects back up just before New Reddington and runs back into GSMA. I am going to have a couple more that run a little bit like this, but not too much like this, if that makes sense. I want to build more branch lines coming off of these main lines in and out of Gardcity, and that includes all of the main lines in and out of Gardcity. So the Grand Northern, I think, is fully populated now. That one's done, but the West Winds could potentially have a branch or two added to it. The Great Eastern, I was tempted to build another branch on that. I haven't again decided on that one just yet. But GSMA on the Southeastern Main Line, that can definitely have another branch or two, as can the Great Western out of GSP, as can the West Winds out of GSE, and the Western Reaches out of GSMI. Plus you've then got GSC and GST with the overground. That's not even been fully populated yet, but I can already see where we'll have capacity for more extensions in the future. The future's very bright for Greater Gardcity. Put it that way. There's plenty more that can be done there. So again, a little bit of rebuilding and a little bit of junction stuff needed to be done here at GSMA. I did some of it off camera. The speed limiting and everything was done off camera, but some of it did have to be done on camera as I was going along, basically, like renaming stuff and tweaking stuff. You will also see at one point I have a service that runs down to Tuningly, which wasn't meant to happen in this video. This was meant to happen in a part 3 at some point in the future, but I decided to throw it in, bundle it all in today, and then realised I hadn't actually done the line between Hartberg and Tuningly, so I had to go and do that, which now means that the Bar City Connect trains between Bar City and Denston / Drentbourne / Tuningly have all now been speed limited as well. So I think that might be the next thing I do, is all of the lines south of Bar City, I'll speed limit those. Then I'll go back and do all the lines north of Bar City, which will include the East Coast route. And again, that's one of the things that made this project so challenging, was each main line leads into another. So I couldn't just do, for example, Munfingford to Denston, because to get from Munfingford to Denston, you either connect up with the line from Buntbourne town and then runs south through Cordinghatton Southeastern, or you connect to the lines going through Tarnway and Funston, or you connect up to Bathurst Street via Cadingbury. And again, you have to end up doing all of those lines. Now, I thought I did the line through Cadingbury when I did the cross region train, but I didn't. I only did the fast lines, and even then I didn't do it very well, so I had to go back and do all the slow lines and redo the fast lines. And it was a struggle. It was time consuming. Let's put it that way. It's very, very time consuming. I'm very happy now that it's done, but would I do something of this scale again in the near future? Probably not. I think I'll stick to individual lines again from now on, because it wasn't just even doing 3 franchises, it wasn't just 3 main lines that I had to do. I think in total I did 7 main lines and like 4 branch lines and then a couple of connecting lines as well. So easy this was not, but I'm very, very happy that it's now done. And something else this kind of kicked me into doing was all of the third rail electrified suburban and semi-fast units in the BR Trains pack, which I'm very, very grateful to whoever wrote the code for both of those. So all the 4, I'm trying to remember what they were classified as. I think it was the 41Xs and the 41... No, was it the 4XX and the 41Xs, I think it was. It was something like that. I have the code somewhere. I could probably get it up and tell you, but I can't be bothered right now. And all of the PNGs as well. Believe it or not, every train you see me add in this video, in this third part of this video, sorry, they all come from just 2 code files, which I think is really impressive. The fact they managed to do that, and the reality of it is, a lot of the real life trains were based on the same stock. And they were just different combinations or different permutations of the carriages. And that's why they end up being like the difference between a 411 and a 413, for example. And the great thing I love about the code, and again, massive, massive props to whoever wrote the code, they actually explained what each bit did, which to an absolute novice like me is heaven. Being able to just look at it and say, okay, so that's what this bit does, and that's what this bit does. And I actually understand the code a lot more now just from reading the step-by-step. And I don't know whether that person wrote it knowing that someone like me could end up using it one day, or whether they wrote it as a message for themselves. But by God, is that helpful. And I try and do that a lot when I'm writing code from scratch, is I try and, as a reminder to myself, really, I write down what everything does, which is something I didn't used to do. And I learned the hard way that you really should write down what things do. So I do spend a lot more time now writing these things down. And I have a little Christmas present for you guys, actually, who are watching these videos, which will be coming out next week. So there will be a teeny tiny video next week. It's not a main episode by any stretch. It might still be listed as episode 80, just for continuity's sake. But it's my Christmas present to all of you guys who've watched and supported these videos over the last 12 months. And to give you a little bit of a spoiler as to what it is, I'm going to be releasing the latest version of the map. And as part of that, I'm going to be releasing the first version of the M4J network version of BR Trains. And as part of that, I'm going to be releasing the repository files. That is the right word, isn't it? Repository files for all of the BR Trains code and images that I've made. So you can have a look through all of that yourself and see how easy it is for you guys to code your own liveries for BR Trains. I am still sticking with the method of those of you who support me on Patreon. We did lose a patron recently as well, which is a bit unfortunate, but I totally understand. But those who do support me on Patreon and wish to become a franchise holder, feel free to use the templates that I've made, the Photoshop templates, to create your own liveries. Or if you want to be a bit more technical and a bit more snazzy, all of the PNG files for all of the trains available in the set currently, including the 313s that were very kindly drawn by Gwyd, I believe it was. Is it Gwyd or Gwyd? I say this every week. But yeah, drawn by Gwyd, and then coded by me. That's in there as well. So that's kind of the exclusive. The M4J rail livery, as nice as it is, that's not really the exclusive. But the 313s are the exclusive. So that's a good reason to head over to m4jmedia.com when that video comes out and download the latest version of the map and the new GRF and go to town, basically. Where was I going with this sentence? Oh yeah, I also have a document that I've written called How to Write a New GRF. So if you want to check that out as well, I will try and remember to link that in the description. If I do forget for whatever reason, please do tell me in the comments and I'll link that. And it should explain how to code the new GRF. If you want to add your own liveries into your own save games, it will teach you how to do that. If you just want to edit some as well and add those in, it will teach you how to do that. If you want to leave things as they are, you don't need to read it because it's all done for you, which is great. But yeah, every train you see me add in this part of the video, then I hadn't actually created the M4J rail livery variants at this stage. So very, very shortly after I finished recording this final part of the video, I did actually go into Photoshop and quickly create the liveries and then add them to the game. So all the trains you see me add here have now got M4J rail liveries, and they look so good. By the way, they look so good. I always had a soft spot for slam door stock. I never really got to ride on it outside of Heritage Railways. Once or twice heading to Brighton on the train, I think I rode on a slam door. And I've been on HSTs in recent times that have had slam door. But, I mean, I can definitely see why they were replaced. They were a health and safety nightmare. But there is something very, very special about the train pulling into the platforms, particularly at busy stations like Waterloo. Before the train's even stopped, there's people hanging out the window, opening the door and stepping off and heading off to catch the underground. And it's why, if people want to know why I've set my network in the late 80s, early 90s, that's basically why. Because that, to me, the early days of privatisation, I feel, is when the British rail network had its most potential. And don't get me wrong, we have lots of projects going on now. Crossrail, Crossrail 2, High Speed 2, Transpennine, what's it called? There's Northern Powerhouse, then there's High Speed 3, which is technically the Northern Powerhouse, and there was a Transpennine one as well, I believe, that was also being worked on, but I can't remember what it's called now. East-West Rail, the South Wales Metro. There's so much going on right now that's really, really encouraging and really, really good to see. But I feel like the best part of the day is the sunrise. And back in the 90s, when privatisation was first starting to become a thing, sort of 92, 93, 94, that's really when the UK rail network was at its sunrise. There was so much ahead of it. And unfortunately, because of certain mistakes that have been made by certain people, it hasn't quite reached its potential. But that's why I chose that, because you've got the best variety of stock, you've got the old classics that everyone loves, you've got just enough forward thinking that you have things like the networkers and the early stages of the Electrostars, because I think the first Electrostars came in 2005, but you've got the networkers, which were kind of, in my opinion at least, the precursors to the Electrostars. You've also got things like the 319s, you've got the 313s at their peak, you've also got the 305s, 315s, 317s, which I don't think are in the game right now, but will be, because I will work on those and get them in. There's so much potential out there, so much potential that was going on back then. And being able to go through and find all these trains and see how they were comprised and creating the liveries and then actually seeing it in the game. And one thing I absolutely loved recording this part of the video especially was actually picking trains specifically for the specifically, give myself hiccups. I'm so passionate about this, I've given myself hiccups. Specifically for the services that they're to operate. I was actually sitting there thinking, is this train going to be running at 90 miles an hour? Do I need the 90 mile an hour variant? Or can I go for the 75 mile an hour variant and get that little bit extra seating capacity? I really enjoy it. It's so sad. I know it's sad. It's the nerdiest, geekiest thing I think I've ever said. But I absolutely love it. And hopefully you guys have loved watching it as well. It's this as I said, this project has been a lot of fun. It's been very time consuming, and I know it sounds like I've been moaning a lot during these videos. But trust me, sorry, I needed a drink there because I've been chatting non-stop for about an hour now. Trust me, this project has been a lot of fun. And it's only doing things like speed limiting that has prevented me from doing this more. Because each line, I have to go through and speed limit it and check it and make sure it's within the realism initiative. And then I can add the services. I was very, very fortunate with things like the Great Eastern and the Great Northern, and even things like the Northwestern, where I'd kind of built it to be fairly long distances of continuous speed limit running, which made it very, very easy to actually go back and tweak it and make it work. But now we're getting into the technical lines. Things like that little switchback that you saw on the Hartberg to Tuningly line that needed to be redone. I mean, that took me an hour to do all the speed limits on that little section of line alone from Hartberg to Tuningly, because it's really fiddly. When you have to custom tailor each signal to that part of the line as well, you can't even just share or copy from other signals because it's very, very specific in what it has to do. That can be a massive pain in the arse. But when it works really well. And to go back to the trains really quickly. So 1SXX was the first service you saw me add, which is Gardcity St Mark to Lenway Rialta Airport via Grentown Interchange, Ginway, Tarnway and Funston, Tarnville and Drenninghead East. Excuse me, my throat is starting to go again, so this is probably going to be the last video I record for quite some time. The second one was Gardcity St Mark to Tuning the Estelle. This is 1TXX, which both of these are semi-fast services, by the way, which is why I was talking about what is the distinguishing factor these days. But yeah, this service runs via Munton, Grentown Interchange, Ginway, Tarnway and Funston, Mondham, Hartburg, Grudingbury, Great Fleffingbourne, Puning Pool, and then Tuning the Estelle. The third one you can see me add now, actually sorry, the first one you saw me add was the loop. The second and third were the two I've just read out. I then skipped over the express ones because I wasn't quite sure. They were the ones where they either appeared on the service schedule and not in the game, or vice versa. So I need to go back and clarify which of those are actually which, because I'm really not sure. Then we got 2AXX, which is Gardcity St Mark to Wunston Kylestra. That's the one you see me adding right now. And that runs via New Rennington, Prindwood South, Nonfingbury, Senwood, New Tronfield, Pendingston, Prenningley Vale, Little Flanway, Feddingham, Suddingville, Menhill City, Little Charnway, Centborough, Dradston, and Prunville. And at Menhill City, of course, it joins the Winston branch from Renston Interchange towards Nuthill and runs there all the way to Winston. That's the one. That was the first time where I actually combined two main lines in and around Gardcity, I believe. And that was kind of a defining moment for the series as well. So I'm going to look to do a couple more of those in the future too. And see how that works out. The next one you see me add is basically the same as the previous one. But when we get to... Is it Little Flanway? Nope, Feddingham. Yeah, at Feddingham it diverges and runs to Bunhattan, where it connects with the Gardcity Overground, which hasn't been added yet but will be in the future. And then the final all-stopper, which is Gardcity St Mark to Tarnway and Funston. I'm not going to read out all the stops on that one because we'll be here all day. And then we have the two semi-fast ones. One runs from Gardcity St Mark to Gardcity Central, but it doesn't run via the Southeastern main line. It runs via the Cadingbury direct line to Cadingbury Junction. Then it goes to Bathurst Street, Dreninghead East, Denston, Carnegie, Wanborough, Fentown West, Drentbourne, Retaia, Great Pundinghattan, Bar City, Senningbury, and then Bar City Central. That one and the Denston one I've put on the back burner for now, because I don't know if I'm actually going to do them still. At the time that those were planned, Gardcity Southern didn't exist as a franchise. It was basically going to be Southwestern and Southeastern, and they would share that central line. Now Gardcity Southern does exist. I feel like the Gardcity St Mark to Denston route has kind of been saturated and it's kind of been done. So I feel like that's going to be taken off the list. I've left it on there for now. And again, I want some feedback from you guys. Do you think I should keep it, or do you think I should perhaps get rid of it? I don't really know. We'll see. Let me know in the comments down below. There's lots of things to chat about in the comments this week, so I'm expecting lots and lots of comments. No excuse not to comment. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone's got stuff they want to talk about. So feel free to comment down below. Not just with feedback on this episode, but also ideas for future ones. Because I'm always on the lookout for ideas. Exciting new things that I can add to the network. So please, 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 if you have some ideas, do comment them down below. Going back to the all-stopping services and the semi-fast services, there are other ones that I would like to add. So we've got an all-stopper between GSMA and Tarnway and Funston, and we've got a semi-fast between GSMA and Lenway Rialta. I would also like to have some cross between the two, so I can all-stopper between Tarnway and Funston and Lenway, and also between Tarnway and Funston and Denston and Drentbourne. I would also like to see some kind of loop between Tarnway and Funston and something like Buntbourne maybe. But instead of going just direct from Buntbourne, Cadingbury, Bathurst Street and then round that way, if it actually went the other way, so if it went like Buntbourne and then down the line through Cordinghattan Southeastern to Denston and then back up north from Denston and then round to Tarnway and Funston that way. Now I do have to be careful because I can't plan too many routes down the Great Eastern Denston branch because Dreninghead is starting to get a little bit chock-a-block as well. But again, a good comment for you guys. Once you have a chance to download the map and play it for yourself, have a look at some of the big gaps in the southwestern, southern and southeastern area and let me know what kind of services you think I should be adding. You don't necessarily have to do network maps or anything like that, but just ideas basically. Like I see you haven't got a train between Quinn City and Drentbourne. That's probably one that I would look at, actually, because that would be, I think I mentioned this earlier even, that would be quite easy to do. But also the fact that there's 3 different ways to go from Munfingford to Denston, via, in fact, I think there's 5 different ways in total. And I think only 3 of them have currently got trains running on them. So feel free to comment ideas for the other 2 and how you would connect those up as well. That'd be great. But yeah, we're pretty much coming towards the end of the video now. There's not really much left to say apart from, again, inviting you guys to leave some comments down below. As I said on Discord, this is the last video of 2020. It's the last full video of 2020. There will be no route overview next week. The next one will be hopefully mid-January. I can't promise it'll be the first week of January because, again, I'm taking much needed time off over winter break to sort of recharge my batteries. I will still record here and there, but I'm not going to be doing an intensive schedule because, trust me, I need this break. So then I'll also be working on the history of the M4J network series as well. I'll mainly be script writing. I think March time that might start, if not before. I'm going to put a realistic schedule on that one though and say March for now. If it does end up being earlier, then great. But the first episode of that one isn't going to go out until they're all produced and ready to go, basically. Because I feel like as more of a documentary style series, you kind of need them all ready to go for consistency's sake more than anything. And then yeah, the M4J network proper will be back probably first, second week of January, give or take. I've got some ideas for what I like to do, so I'll be getting on with those. I think it'll be plane and bus based stuff in the next couple of episodes, and then we'll go full steam ahead back to railways again in the not too distant future. But from me, for now, thank you very much everybody who's been watching these videos throughout the year. It really is appreciated. Thank you to everyone who's helped the channel grow. I'd say it's more of a plateau right now, but the fact that it is remaining consistent still, we're not really gaining anyone, but we're also not really losing anyone. It is very, very good still. I'm taking the positives from it. And here's hoping next year we can have a big leap and a charge at it and maybe try and hit 2,500 subscribers by the end of the year. I think that's a pretty realistic target, but we shall see. But yeah, have a very, very good winter break. Merry Christmas to all of you who celebrate it. If you celebrate any other religious festivals throughout the winter break, then, you know, have a good one. I don't really know which ones are there. I'm worried if I start naming them, I might forget one. I definitely don't want to offend anyone there. But yeah, Merry Christmas to all who celebrate it. Happy holidays to all of you who don't. And have a good new year as well. And I'll see you all very, very early in 2021. So until next time, guys, thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. And of course, if you enjoyed the series so far, drop some comments down below with ideas for future episodes. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. I've got a subscriber goal now, so let's try and hit it. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for your continued support. You continue to make the channel what it is. And yeah, have a good one, guys. And until next time, which will be next year, I will see you soon.